All right, click the links for Odyssey, BitChute, Gab, Telegram, or join channel, become a member, or check me out on Subscribe. So the various other links. So, House of the Dragon showrunners reveal Game of Thrones spin-off written with focus on addressing accusations of istophobicism against original series. Plot twist: these are just no. There was no istophobicism. It's a story. It's a complete, discrete entity. It was created and blossomed and given to the world to enjoy. It was a story from the mind of one creator. If you want to write something different, then just write your own story. Nobody is stopping you, and there's no better time in history to create something new. Comicsgate has shown you the power of that. You can go. John Delarose sells his stuff on Amazon. He sells his stuff through Comicsgate and through Indiegogo and Kickstarter. There are so many tools in terms of the ability to network for free, to get on social media, to show your stuff around, to go on all these different channels and talk about your whatever it is, comic books to books. Red Gaze has got books out there, and all these guys have got these books. These guys decided, like Sweetcast and Soul Finder guy, the Doug Ernst and Clint Stoker. You always use those guys as examples of people who started off with a small comic and just slowly started growing their franchise, and it just got better and better over time. Like, there's nobody stopping any of these people. Hey, you want to write your own Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Wheel of Time? It's like Lord of the Rings fantasy did not start with Lord of the Rings. Even Tolkien himself in his interviews, he was talking about how he was, like, Shadowfax the name is taken from earlier fantasy series, and other names are kind of an homage to earlier fantasy stories that he wrote. It didn't start with Tolkien's stuff. You can write your own story about dwarves, goblins, elves, all this kind of stuff. I don't know if hobbits might be trademarked, but gnomes or little people or whatever kind of, the story of these fantastic European mythological characters, fairies and sprites and woodland nymphs and all the kind of stuff. It's like, that's not trademarked. You can take those characters and basically write your own type of Lord of the Rings sort of thing. People have been doing that for a long time. Nothing is stopping any of these people. To write a book, there's no better time to write a book and self-publish. You don't need to go to, Miriam, whoever, some big publishing house. That was like 20 years ago, before the internet. You had to do that kind of stuff, where you had to know people, and you had to play a certain game. It's like, you don't have to play that anymore, which means you have to self-publish, which means you have to kind of you do it all yourself, but you're also getting all the reward for it. And ultimately, if it's good, and it will catch on. I promise you that. So there's nobody stopping any of these people, and they keep coming like, we need to redress past grievances. Well, I forgot the guy who wrote this story, and the guy who wrote Wheel of Time and all these other stories. They didn't interfere with you in any way whatsoever. There's nothing stopping you from putting pen to paper and writing your own Wheel of Time. And if you want to make some diverse Bolshevik nonsense story, whatever, hey, go find an audience for it. Knock yourself out. So there's the whole concept of, like, these original guys who wrote these books, they didn't hurt you in any way. They don't owe you anything. Their fan base doesn't owe you anything. It's not up to them and their fan base to support you as you corrupt something. It's up to you to just simply write a new story, network it, market it yourself, get it out there. People will bend over backwards to help you if they think that you're passionate about something and it's halfway decent. There's no problem with that. If anything, all these guys paved the way, the original writers paved the way by making people really interested in fantasy stories. If you come out with kind of a, Lord of the Rings knockoff, it's probably going to do pretty well, because they've already primed the pump for the past 50 years with these stories. People are ready for this kind of stuff. Keep in mind as we go through this, the chick who gives some insane quotes, Emila Clark, she was in Game of Thrones. She had a blonde wig on. She wrote this comic book, which is horrible as it looks. I think some people reviewed it a few years ago when it came out. It's 3 40-page comics, and it is way, way overwritten. Okay, so Game of Thrones, or the knockoff spinoff, gets woke, which is essentially AfroHobbit's Part 9. I mean, it's the same kind of story told over and over. You take something that someone else created, and then you just start swapping out characters. It decided to make it diverse and anti-patriarchy. So the new theme is to be European man bad, specifically blonde man bad. Blonde hair, blue eyes for them is a real sticking point. Because here's the thing with all this, like, everything they do is a straw man. Like all this Übermensch, Untermensch straw man from, German terminology or Hollywood interpretation of German terminology from the 30s. There are tons of people in the far right who don't give two shits about that kind of stuff. But people in the far left have this straw man version of, like, you ever wonder why they make all the bad characters blonde hair, blue eyed? That's projection. That's like their own inadequacy projecting. Like, they really buy into this Übermensch, Untermensch, straw man philosophy that they've been brainwashed into. That's how they think the world is. That's how they think these people see themselves. Where the actual blonde hair, blue eyed people themselves don't think about that at all. At all. It's just this projection of self-hate from these far left-wing SJWs, who, to be fair, you look at them, most of them are, fat and schlubby and just kind of miserable, dejected people who, like, look at Antifa and go, like, if all those guys in Antifa, guys and girls, if they ate right and exercised, in 2 years they wouldn't be in Antifa anymore. They just suddenly wouldn't care anymore because they'd be busy having relationships and making friendships and living life, and they wouldn't be these bitter, miserable people. Like, the people are bitter, miserable because a lot of it is because like what they're feeding themselves and kind of the way they look. It's just like they're these miserable basement dwellers who are playing video games and they're just unhappy at the world because they're 300 pounds and they're not able to get dates. It's like, okay, well, instead of externalizing that hatred, why don't you just eat better and get some exercise? I guarantee you won't be in Antifa any longer, because if you look at the collection of the mugshots of Antifa, they're all really ugly, miserable people. None of those people look like models. Anyway, so AfroHobbit's 9 gets diverse. And she says, Emila Clark says in this interview that women can run a kingdom better than men. No, there's not a chance of that. Women are crazy. Women can't work with women. Women don't get along with women. How are you not aware of how crazy women are? Perhaps you forgot a man wrote the story, Game of Thrones, that great big fat guy with the beard who's really slow and like writing the ends of the series. Because men write most cool stories. Several European creations, several European countries over the past 10 years have seen what happened when women held power, or even when women hold a vote. It's an absolute disaster for those countries. Hashtag the 19th Amendment was a mistake. Yeah, it really was. So why don't these women just write their own stories? And actually, the chick in the show, Emila Clark, did. The woke story, Moms, about the power of her vagina. For some reason, woke women are endlessly fascinated by a body part that, I mean, yeah, it's magical in the sense that you can deliver new life, bear young, female, right? Oh, wait, that's triggering, right? Because it's some kind of nonsense Bolshevik propaganda that 10 years from now will be completely forgotten. So her comic book went right to a recycling bin. The only people who, I was going to say bought it, but they probably pirated it online, were the YouTube reviewers who took a look at it. It was just the smallest font imaginable and very, very wordy. It was massively overwritten, and all the antagonists were blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, which is just standard SJW theory. Anything Aryan is evil. Anything English or German, for some reason, it's like, didn't they fight each other? It's like, surely in your mindset, one of those has to be the good guys. And in the SJW mindset, the English and the Germans, they're all bad guys. Like, everyone is just a bad guy to them. Everyone but them seems to magically be on the wrong side of history. The thing is, we all know it's kind of the opposite. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed people are, I mean, Northern Europeans, they're awesome. They're like the nicest, most altruistic, generous, kind-hearted people on earth. Like I said, it's the projection of the SJW's own horrible, horrible inadequacy to see everything as beautiful as somehow against them. It's like, just eat right and please start walking. All of a sudden, you won't be an SJW anymore because you'll be too busy getting laid. Most of the cool things in the world history has come from blue-eyed people. There's actually kind of an interesting theory about why blue-eyed people are so special. It's sort of interesting how these pop culture vultures, which is very apropos, they turn everything upside down. People love blonde hair and blue eyes because it's rare and beautiful. And it's like they always make the bad guys. If you go through film history, go all the way back to your childhood, go through all those movies you've watched, and you notice a shift over in Hollywood where the antagonists might have been kind of equally distributed between dark hair, dark eyes, and then they slowly, post-war years, they slowly started making them more and more blonde-haired, blue-eyed. In fact, there's a weird thing they did in Hollywood where if you go back and you think of all the struggle snuggle scenes you've seen in Hollywood films, it's all by fair-skinned people with the light, and then you look up the statistics and you're like, oh, that's a lie. Like it's all a lie. In fact, it was that John Grisham book, they remade it. It was based on a true story of a struggle snuggle, but when they remade it, they race swapped the characters to make the antagonists fair-skinned people, where the real story was the opposite. But because Hollywood is made of these Bolsheviks who hate you, they lied and they told this story. I forget, is it A Time to Kill, I think? It's like they made that movie about all these two white guys struggle snuggle some girl, and then they delete her, I think. It's like, yeah, but that story, it's actually have that story opposite. Why didn't you tell the real story, Hollywood? Good question, Hollywood. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, check me out, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.